got some great guests in studio talking about some things going on with the PUD. PUD number 3 is Joel Myer and Justin Holzgrove. Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing here this morning?
Doing great. Enjoying a great spate of hot weather the last couple of weeks. Although I'm getting a little bit nervous being a native Washingtonian. When I go 2 weeks without any rain, I start getting a nervous tick.
I know, right?
Yeah, right.
I felt a little bit here this morning. Nothing like spectacular, but there was a mist out there.
I felt it too, right there.
Right. We'll leave that with that. You guys are here today to talk to me and us about hydropower.
Yes.
What's the story on hydropower? I think we all kind of, at some level, get a sense of how it works. Being so close to the ocean, and the Columbia River is obviously a big portion of that. What is the deal with hydropower?
Well, we found that there's an interesting mix on people that really know where their electricity comes from, and some people that just know that when they turn the switch on, electricity comes out, turns on the light. It's kind of like when you go to the grocery store and you get milk, you have no clue where it comes from. You just know it's milk and it's there at the grocery store. And in this case, there are a lot of different challenges, and there are also a lot of different benefits from the hydropower system in the Pacific Northwest that no other portion of the country gets. And one of those is having clean air, because there's no carbon emissions from hydropower. Another one is recreation, transportation, things like that. The electricity that I'm going to include Mason PUD 1 in this, because all public utilities in the Northwest get this benefit. But because of having hydro, Mason PUD 1, Mason PUD 3 get 87% of their electricity from that source, which basically means that when you throw in the non-carbon emitting resource of nuclear, 97% of the electricity used by customers here in Mason County is carbon free.
Wow.
As opposed to other parts of the state that are supplied by private power providers, can be upwards of 40 to 50, possibly even 60% carbon-based electricity. When you look at the rest of the country, we are the envy of the rest of the country in terms of the clean energy we have, because the energy mix for most of the rest of the country is 60% coal, not just coal natural gas, but coal. And so therefore, when you take a look at the Pacific Northwest, we have this huge resource many people don't know about, know where their electricity comes from. And if you take it for granted, other people may take advantage. And that's one of the situations that we're seeing right now, is that when you have a system with 31 dams providing electricity at cost to public power utilities, and a system that is spending probably one of the most expensive Endangered Species Act programs in the world, and only this region is paying for that, there are a lot of people that want to glom onto that and find their part of it. But the primary purpose is making sure people know that because of hydropower, we have reliable, renewable, clean, always there electricity.
If you take power from a hydroelectric dam on the Columbia River, that is quite a ways away from Mason County. How does it get to us? I mean, where are the, how does it get to us?
Well, if you're familiar with Shelton, and I know that you are, you'll see over near the McDonald's up on by Mountain View, there are some very, very large steel towers. Those are BPA transmission lines, and they run all along the Pacific Northwest, actually across 5 states. And our power all comes in through that Shelton substation. At that location, that's the BPA Shelton substation. There are several points of delivery along the way, but that's the main one. And if you can think of a map of Mason County, in Shelton is where that splits. So there's a line that goes up the Olympic Peninsula, and that would feed Jefferson PUD and Clallam PUD, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a line that heads up towards the Bremerton direction. So there's a big Y here in Shelton, and our tap comes from Olympia. And then in Olympia, you reach the BPA power lines that are along the I-5 corridor, and they have these main distribution trunks. They have several runs that go east across the mountains, but it comes across these huge transmission structures at very, very high voltage, and that high voltage allows the electricity to be pushed, if you will, very long distances.
How do you determine the percentage that comes in from hydro? You say, well, I want to take 30% from hydro. I want to take 30% from solar. You can do that?
Well, here's an example. When we're one of a number of utilities that are called full requirements customers of Bonneville Power Administration. And so we get virtually all of our electricity from BPA. So 97% of our electricity comes from generators that the BPA sends the electricity to us from. Boy, what a terrible grammatical sentence that was. But so what they will do when the state asks for the fuel mix, they'll say, okay, you get almost all your electricity from BPA. BPA, where are those sources? And they lay it out.
Oh, okay.
So here's where the electricity comes from. There are certain other resources we get electricity that do come through on the transmission system. For example, we do get electricity from our Nine Canyon wind farm in eastern Washington, of which we're a partner. We get electricity from the White Creek wind farm, which is along the Columbia River, which we're also a partner. And we get a very tiny amount of fossil fuel based, which is like 2%. It's a very small amount, but that's stuff that comes in to help make sure that our 100% stays 100% resource.
I think another piece to that is we work with Bonneville to do scheduling of our resources. So the amount of energy that's on the grid is continually being ramped up and down to meet the load. That is a balance that must happen. There can't be an oversupply, if you will, on the grid. So there has to be a balance there. And so we work with Bonneville to let them know what our forecast is, to let them know how much power we expect to be using, and then they shape it throughout the day constantly. I mean, if we turn one of these lights off or this computer off, that is a drop in load. And so it's just a drop in the river, if you will, but it does have to be reflected, back on the transmission grid management. And so we work with Bonneville along with all of the utilities that get power from them to do that.
So the water is flowing down the river. It gets to a dam. It starts spinning these massive turbines, and that's how we collect hydropower now. Are there other ways? I've seen some types of turbine things that they're thinking about putting in rivers themselves, like smaller rivers, or I've seen things that'll kind of plop up and down when the waves come in. Are these all other options that you guys are using, or are there technology there for that yet?
Well, the many of these are experimental. For example, the tidal energy, like you were talking about, the in-river, those are small, but they are a part of the whole mix. And this is something that's really important when we're talking about the Columbia River system. Think of it as the battery to wind farms and solar farms and tidal energy and resources like that. As those resources come online, they've got to somehow be backed up if they stop. So if the wind doesn't blow, what fills the gap? Hydro, because you can ramp that up really quickly. Solar energy, great resource, clean, but at night you're not going to have it there unless you have a huge battery to help you out. In the Pacific Northwest, that huge battery is the Columbia River system, because it can store energy for when it's needed and then release it and make up for what it doesn't get in the solar. So a lot of those things are a part of the mix. It's the Bonneville Power Administration's ability to, as Justin said, shape it and make it fit that makes the hydro system so valuable. And if we didn't have the flexibility that we have now, that'd be a real problem for keeping a reliable system with all these other renewables coming into the system.
I'm pretty excited about the energy development that you mentioned. I've seen that kind of run of the river, sits on the bottom of a smaller stream and has a turbine. The tidal power, I think here in Puget Sound and Hood Canal in Mason County, I see a future where we do have turbines essentially that sit at the bottom of Hood Canal, the bottom of maybe Hammersley Inlet or some of the other passages around here that spin as the tide flows in and out, and that could be potentially a significant source of energy for Mason PUD 3 and Mason PUD 1. I see that world sometime in the future, and that's pretty exciting. I think jobs in the energy industry and the renewable energy industry are very, very, very cool. They are only going to grow, guaranteed. And if there's any young people listening, that's a field that you really want to look into. Pretty exciting stuff. Yeah. That's world-changing stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Very cool.
Good. The other thing that you guys, we're gonna just briefly mention it now. You'll have you guys back on next week, so we're running short on time. Is that fiberhood project you guys have been working on?
Fiber hoods.
Being in the hood.
Big stuff here. I'll just give you a teaser.
Please.
Fiber optic internet up to 1 gig speeds is coming to rural Mason County
Wow.
that don't have any other choices for high-speed broadband. PUD3's working together with our retail partners, including iFiber and others, and we're really excited for this. Here's a URL, www.pud3.org/fiberhood.
Fiberhood.
Good stuff. Log in, see if you're in a fiberhood, and we'll be back next week to talk more about it.
Very nice. Joel Myer, Justin Holzgrove, PUD number 3. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.